Why did Alexander Volkanovski remain pound for pound number one? And I know you got a ton of reasons why, but let me just remind you, number one lost to number two. Number two is supposed to be number one. That's math. 2 divided by 1, 1. Therefore, 2 is supposed to be 1, but it's not. And Volkanovski remains pound for pound number 1. And so why? Right? I mean, why? Why did he remain pound for pound number 1? Well, a lot of people are suggesting a rematch. A lot of people are suggesting that there should be a rematch since this was a close fight and there was controversy. And any close fight or any controversial fight, you would always want to make a rematch. I mean, this had everything. All fun fights, sometimes they deserve a rematch. This was a crazy fight. This was a close fight. This had controversy. It deserves a rematch. So what does this have to do with Volkanovski being number one pound for pound? Well, if Volkanovski didn't remain pound for pound number one, and they created a rematch, there would be no point of a rematch. Islam Makhachev would have no motivation to take that fight. Now, I know the UFC doesn't create who's number one pound for pound, but obviously they have an opinion on it. They have a control over it. And if Volkanovski didn't remain pound for pound number one, and Islam Makhachev and Alexander Volkanovski fought, only Volkanovski would have a prize. Islam wouldn't have a prize. But with Volkanovski remaining pound for pound number one, there would be motivation for Islam to fight Volkanovski again. Not just a motivation for Islam, but a motivation for us to see this fight again. Because there's a meaning to it. They're doing it to prove who's really the best. Because they had a close fight. I mean, they had a really close fight that I thought Islam Makhachev won. Apparently, some people don't agree with me. Now, I would imagine that would just be expectation bias. And you may admit to that or not. Doesn't matter. Volkanovski remains pound for pound number one. We need a rematch. I want a rematch. I mean, all of you want a rematch. I agree that there should be a rematch. I like that idea. I totally support it. But with Islam Makhachev not being number one pound for pound, oh boy, that pissed me off. That pissed me off until I realized, well, if they were to rematch this fight, there would be something for Islam to win. I mean, just picture a world where they did a rematch and Islam was number one pound for pound. Coming into the fight, it was number one pound for pound. He's going in that fight to lose everything and win nothing. Just to prove to the people. Just to prove to the people that he's number one pound for pound. That's all that he's gonna go in there to do. But now come back to the real world, where Volkanovski is number one pound for pound and Islam isn't. Even though the math just doesn't add up. But I'll take it. I'll take it. Because if there was a rematch, Islam Makhachev would be going into that fight with a lot to lose and a lot to gain. And if we're talking about specifically a impact, because every fight needs to have an impact. That's why prelims aren't being watched often, because they don't have an impact on the entire picture. But Volkanovski and Islam, these guys, they have an impact. It will impact who's going to be number one pound for pound. It's going to change the course of UFC history. And I do like the idea that Volkanovski remains pound for pound number one. Because of the only reason why I like Volkanovski being number one pound for pound, and this is the only reason, is because if they were to rematch, Islam Makhachev would have everything to lose and everything to win. And I like that idea because these two guys were very close. It deserves a rematch. A big fight, a crazy fight, a back and forth fight. It deserves a rematch. Just like Prohaska and Glover. They booked a rematch. Fortunately, it didn't happen. But it is what it is. And I do hope that they get a rematch. I do hope that justice is served for the guy that felt like he was robbed. Everybody's talking about how Volkanovski was robbed of a moment. Even he said it, he was robbed of a moment. Well, how about Islam, who was robbed of number one pound for pound status? The very thing he's been working hard for. The very reason why he went over to Australia, totally different continent, totally different country, totally different temperature, totally different environment, without Khabib in his corner, just to get pound for pound number one. That's the very reason he did it, and he was robbed of it. And I like the idea of a rematch, because who wins this wins everything the other guy has, including bragging rights, including status, including title, including the guy who's best in the world. You've been working hard for this. I've been working hard for this. I want to hear that. I want to hear both from those guys. They've been working so hard just to win against the other guy. And it feels like that whole Sunday for them was just a bad dream. And I like a rematch because both of these fighters, keep in mind, they have everything to lose and everything to win.